Darlene Dunmeyer-Roberson is a Hollywood native with years of experience in consulting and education. Now she wants to take that experience to the Charleston County School Board, where she wants to become the next Charleston County School Board member to represent District 8, the Islands. I talk one-on-one with Darlene for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Darlene Dunmeyer-Roberson, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good morning. Thank you, Quintin, for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I know that you obviously were born and raised in Hollywood, so you're a Hollywood native. You're a proud product of the Charleston County School District, District 23, where you excelled in the classroom and many extracurricular activities. And I know that you are the CEO of the Next Level Educational Services, LLC, which obviously you provide educational consulting services to educational and state agencies. Now you're running to represent District 8 and the constituents, that is, and the families across Charleston County on the Consolidated School Board, which you hope to be in November. Let me ask you, why now, with your experience and background?
Quintin, that is an excellent question. And many have asked that question. I do qualify and with my credentials and my background and 36 years of experience in education and counseling. Why did I not choose to run for the state superintendent position? And my answer has remained the same. Charity begins at home. And so this was my first choice. Unlike other candidates who ran for state superintendent, and when they lost, they jumped into this race, I was committed to running for Charleston County School District Consolidated Board for District 8. And let me tell you why. When I moved home permanently in 2019, I have been going back and forth between South Carolina and Virginia, providing educational support services for many years. And we moved back in 2019, and I provided educational consult services to North Charleston and St. John's High School. So being in the grind and in the operation of the daily operations, I got to see some things that was really disheartening to me. As you said earlier, I am a 1982 graduate of Baptist Hill High School. And for me, 40 years ago, we had less resources, but we got more. Today in 2022, the district has much more resources, but it seems like the kids in District 8, my district, they are getting less. So because I have the credentials, a lot of constituents reach out to me and ask me to run for this office. So it was actually the constituents that came to me to ask me to run for this seat. And so after, talking with my family, I decided that, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work at home and make sure that at this point in time, if for such a time as this, the constituents of District 8, and District 8, I'm sure that, by now, and I'm hoping that everyone understands, the change in dynamics for the Consolidated Board. District 8 now covers a part of James Island, Johns Island, Monmouth Island, Edisto Island, Ravenel, and the metropolis of Hollywood. These are the rural areas, the Sea Islands. And I want to make sure that we have a voice. We will no longer be the echo, and we will be the voice. And if elected, when elected, I will lead from the front and make sure that the schools in District 8 receive the proper allocations and resources as everyone else in the district.
Where are those allocations and resources right now, Ms. Darlene?
Well, those allocations and resources, they span across the district. However, when we look at equity, I don't believe that it's spread across the district fairly. And I say that because when you visit schools in the Mount Pleasant area and you see the state-of-the-art campuses that they have, you see their athletic fields, you see their teacher allocations, those things aren't the same when you look at District 8. And I'll give you an example. Just visiting, looking at Baptist Hill athletic fields and equipment, it could really use a complete overhaul. And Quintin, not just being spruced up, and not just Baptist Hill, St. John's. I talked to the athletes out there, and I asked them, what is it, if I were to ask you one thing that you want from the district, and they said just new athletic equipment. So these are the things that when I say that the resources aren't spread equally, it's just little things. And before we can move on to greater things, we have to meet the basic needs out here. You know, academics and athletics, they all make up for a holistic approach to educating a child. And so it will be my responsibility to make sure that the resources are spread equally across the board and that we aren't forgotten out here in the rural areas.
Now, Ms. Darlene, going back to obviously the Baptist Hills and St. John's, and you mentioned some of the schools in Mount Pleasant, you know, Wando and all those other schools. What exactly are the teacher allocations for District 8?
Well, it depends on the size of your schools and your allocations. So, you know, it's going to be different because of the size of the schools. However, I believe that there are other things that can be done and other resources that can be poured into our schools. The majority of the schools in District 8, they're Title I schools. So in addition to the regular allocations that we receive out here for teachers, we also receive Title I funds from the federal government because the schools out here are high poverty schools. And it's based on the number of students that receive free and reduced lunches. So with all of those extra resources that should come out here, I want to make sure that we have everything that we should receive. You know, and so, and in doing so, it takes someone to be able to look at the budget and unpack it and make sure that things aren't, you know, stashed somewhere, and it should be coming out to District 8 schools. You know, again, another thing that comes to mind when I think about the differences in allocation. When you look at schools and again, let me just put this disclaimer out there.
Sure.
I am in no way talking badly about Wando, Lucy Beacon, because they're doing what they're actually supposed to do. They advocate for their students, they advocate for resources, and that's what they're supposed to do. So I am very pleased that we are now moving to single member districts so that the schools out here will have someone to advocate on their behalf. An example, the schools over there, they have an athletic director who doesn't have to teach. He's just responsible for the athletic programs. Well, the athletic director at St. John's and Baptist Hill, they're responsible for teaching as well as the athletic programs. Well, that's not equity. So we need to make sure that across the board in the district that we have equity. We can't get to equality until we meet the equity standards. And so those are just some things that we have to really look at and unpack. So because this is home for me, because I am familiar with the structures out here, it's going to be easy for me to go in. I have relationships already with most of the schools. I've met with the principals at Baptist Hill, at St. John's, at E.B. Ellington. I met with staff members at Baptist Hill. I've already talked to them. I've met with the constituent board. And so this is what we need. This is not the time to send someone to 75 Calhoun who's not going to be the voice. We have to bring our schools up so that the entire district will be a successful district. Quintin, when we talk about public education in Charleston County, Charleston is the second largest school district in South Carolina. It's one of the richest districts. So we should not be talking about our students not being able to read on grade level. This district put out some very alarming data that 51% of the students in Charleston County don't read on grade level. 75% of students in poverty don't read on grade level, and 82% of Black students don't read on grade level. It's time for us to bring solutions and stop talking about problems.
Now, Ms. Darlene, how many people in District 8 are actually receiving free or reduced lunch?
The majority of the students. And I say that because they're listed, our schools out here, the majority of our schools are Title I. So with that being in place, most of the students do receive free or reduced lunch. So the majority of the students are receiving free and reduced lunch out here.
And how many of those people actually receive reduced or free lunch in 2020?
I don't have the exact numbers for 2020 school year, but I would say it is still the majority. The designation has not changed out here, and so the numbers, it just goes up with the enrollment. So you know, it doesn't change because until the designation change, and the designations for Title I is based on your socioeconomic status. So those things aren't going to change from year to year unless something drastic happens. Now, let me say this. We are getting a lot of developments out here in the rural areas. And that could be, a good thing, or it could be a bad thing. So what we are hoping out here is that with the development, that the individuals and the families that are moving into District 8, that we will be able to bring our scores up. A lot of the schools are rated below average. We have some that's good and some that's average. But what we want to do is bring the bottom up so that when the developments come out here and we have new families coming in, that they would want their children to attend our schools, our community schools that's already in place, and not necessarily have to open another school and close one of our schools. So it would be my first line of action is to meet with this the school improvement councils and start doing situational assessments to see exactly where the problems are, and so that we can get those problems corrected, and so that our community schools can once again thrive as it did 40 years ago.
Now, how many new families are actually moving into District 8 right now, Ms. Darlene?
I don't know how many new families, the exact number, Quintin, but I can tell you developments in housing are going up. The traffic is just extremely high around here. There's developments in my neighborhood. They're in Johns Island. They're going down on 17 South daily. They're expecting at least 500 homes to be built out there. So with all of that, we need to make sure that we have adequate in our public education system across Charleston County meet standards. We don't want to have to always depend on Academic Magnet and Wando and West Ashley and James Island Charter to bring us up. We need to go ahead and concentrate on what the problems are in District 8 and then bring the bottom up. There's a complete department in 75 Calhoun called Learning Services. It is their responsibility to go out and practice management by walk around. It is not their responsibility to sit in 75 Calhoun. If there are some deficiencies, they're supposed to have boots on the ground inside of these schools to make sure that teachers have the resources that they need, that teachers have the support that they need, that principals have everything that they need so that they can run their schools. It is not the job of the principal and the teachers alone to make these things work. It is the job of the district to make sure that these schools have everything they need so that when it's time for instructions, teachers can do just that. They can do what they are paid to do, to teach, and not have to worry about not having proper resources. So what I'm going to do is make sure that the teachers out here and the principals and the stakeholders have the resources that they need to provide a proper education to our students.
Now, when you think about the learning services over here at 75 Calhoun, Ms. Darlene, what exactly are the deficiencies in your district right now?
Deficiencies in my district it spans across the board. One, there's kids in the elementary segment of it not reading on grade level. And so that continues on. If we all know that when you enter school to read to learn. And then once you get to third grade, you are reading to learn. So it switches over. So by third grade, if you're not reading to learn, then what we're doing is pipelining them, off to prison, and pipelining them, to more deficiencies. So we have to, by the third grade, make sure that all of our students out here are reading on grade level. We cannot continue to let them go on and they're not reading on grade level by third grade.
Now, okay, Ms. Darlene, let me ask you this. With COVID, and it's still going on right now, obviously, but what more deficiencies have been added because of COVID in your district?
I think more deficiencies are added or continuing. The graduation rate. That's another thing that's really disturbing. If we can have schools in a district that graduate 90% of their kids, 96%, 98%, then we should not accept that the schools are here graduating 86% of their kids or 74%. When you go to school to learn and you go to school to graduate. 100% of kids should graduate on time. That's what on-time graduation means. So that's a deficiency. We should not applaud 74% or 86%. We need to figure out what's going on. Now, we do understand that in that 100% graduation on time number, there are students that probably have IEPs or receive, special diplomas. So you give an account for that. So, I think the only school that we probably will have 100% graduation is Academic Magnet. But we understand that. But I think anything under 95% should be unacceptable. And so that brings me to the next thing of our superintendent. We need someone that, again, the management structure. The board is responsible for governance and policy and oversight. The board reports to the people. The superintendent reports to the board.
Sure.
It is our responsibility to make sure that the new and incoming superintendent is experienced and has the capabilities and the capacity to take this district to the next level. Not only the schools that's already in the top, but the schools that's in the bottom as well. We need someone that has the capacity to do that.
Okay, Ms. Darlene, obviously right now there's going to be a new school board coming in November. Should the Charleston County School Board, the current school board, should they just hold off on hiring a new superintendent until you all get in?
Absolutely. They absolutely should. Yes. I think that the current school board should concentrate on opening school as best as possible and leave the new superintendent to the new school board. It is absolutely imperative that the new school board has a say and selection of the new superintendent.
And I know I'm going backwards because you just said, hey, let's just wait until after the new school board is elected. But would you keep the current interim superintendent in place or hire him full time as a superintendent?
Well, Quintin, I guess I should have said this before we got started. I am very direct and I speak truth to power. That is just who I am. I do not think that we should keep the interim superintendent in place. And let me tell you why.
Okay.
I don't know him personally,
Sure.
but if someone had asked me, I would have selected someone who was a retired superintendent. Being a superintendent of a school is very serious. You need to have an educational background. You need to have, knowledge of what it takes to run an operation. The interim superintendent is an accountant. He's the financial person. That's his craft. Had we not moved him from his position, let him stay, we had a whole ripple effect when we moved him. That was not, I don't understand how the current board put their stamp of approval on that. Had they just brought in a retired superintendent, that person would have been able to continue on because they had the experience. Now we moved the CFO to be the interim, then we moved the next person to take his job, then we moved someone else to do something else. That's a lot of movement that was completely unnecessary. And I think that we have to put a little bit more thought into our decision-making process and how we do things, because at the end of the day, it affects our students.
Yes, ma'am. And going back to the graduation rate, how many of those students in District 8 are currently receive like IEPs and those special diplomas, as you mentioned earlier?
Well, I'm going to take a guess and let's say if your graduation rate is supposed to be 100% and you're graduating 80% of your students, so you're missing 20%. So in that 20%, 10% could possibly be IEP diplomas or special diplomas, and the other 10% could possibly be students that just fell behind, or students that dropped out, and they're being accounted for in the number. So it just depends on the building and the number of special needs students that they have in the building, because each building differ with their population size and their special needs population.
Now, they only give me 20 minutes here, but let me ask you this. What's the graduation rate right now at St. John's?
For the 2021 school year, I believe St. John's was at 80% graduation rate.
Now, we know the demographics of the school, but what's the poverty index, obviously, from 2020 to 2021?
Say it again.
Yes, ma'am. We know the demographics of the school, but what's the poverty index for that particular school from the 2021 to 2022 school season?
I'm not sure what the poverty index is.
Okay. What percentage of students at St. John scored a C or higher on algebra, biology, or English gateway course assessments for the end of course of the 2021-22 school season?
Yeah. So Quintin, those data information that you asked, they're all captured on Charleston County School District dashboards. For a candidate to know all of that information is highly unlikely. So what I would do, as I tell my constituents, please go to the CCSD school, school website, and go to their dashboard, and you'll be able to see all of the information for yourself. I cannot spew out the exact numbers for St. John's or any of the schools, but what I do know is that we should have an accurate reading for test scores in this school year, and in the last 2 school years, all of the schools across the state received waivers from the state because of COVID. So a lot of the EOC scores were not accounted for because they were optional, and the state did not require it, and they gave waivers across the state because of COVID. So the scores that will be coming out this July will definitely show an indication of where we are and where we've come from since COVID.
Well, let me ask you, were there any growth in the reading and math results for those schools?
We will know that in July.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. What's the average ACT score for an 11th grader at St. John's?
The average, and I'm going to take a guess just from the scores that I've looked at.
Okay.
They're pretty smart kids at St. John's. I tell everyone that I'm a Bobcat for life.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with Mr. Darby, so I'm a Cougar at heart. And then I went over to St. John's and I became an Islander. So I love the schools that I participate in and provide services to. But St. John's students probably have an average scores in the 1,000, 1,100. Well, you said SAT?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, between average 900 to 1,100 at St. John's.
Now, speaking of St. John's and Baptist Hill, what is the average years of experience for the average teacher?
Now, that's a very good question. And that is something that, again, not just the Learning Services Department, for me, if I'm elected, would need to have boots on the ground, but there's some things and issues in the HR department as well. You know, how do you recruit teachers for rural schools? Mm-hmm. What is your process for recruiting minority teachers out in the rural areas? And what is your plan? And what is the protocol for teacher retention? When you look at the data for the average teachers out in the rural area, they're young teachers. Most of the teachers have a high percent, maybe about 57% of the teachers in the rural area have 0 to 3 years of experience. And then when you go to the next category of 5 to 10 years, maybe about 20%. And then when you look again, at the degrees, most of them, have bachelor's degrees. And so when you do a comparison again with teachers at Academic Magnet and Wando, right, those teachers have more years of experience. They are vested in their schools, and they also, they have more years of experience. They're invested in their schools, and they have master's degree. Yeah. So those are some of the things that we really need to look at when we come in here. We can't fix a problem if we are just talking about it and then we brush off it. It's really time to stop all of this superficial bravado and really dig down and start solving problems. I have dubbed my campaign the real solution because we know what the problems are. We just now need to stop the superficial bravado and start problem solving.
Well, let me go to that. The real solution, rejuvenating real education. How do you rejuvenate real education with your solution, Ms. Darlene?
You rejuvenate it, one, by galvanizing your community, bringing in those parents, revitalizing the parent engagement and the community involvement in the learning process. When I was a student out here, the competition between Baptist Hill and St. John's, it was so refreshing. We had vibrant schools. It was friendly competition that we had. Our schools were our parents were involved, the community were involved. Since the constituents out here found out that I was running, I've had retired educators calling me and coming up to me saying that, let me know what you need me to do. I'm in it. We have to turn this thing around. And so I would say the key to revitalizing rural education is bringing in those parents, re-engaging them in the educational process. Educating them and bringing awareness to, what the problems are and how we can solve it and move forward together.
Now, Ms. Darlene, going back to what you talked about earlier as far as the teacher experience, how many minorities teachers are there right now in District 8?
I don't know that they're the exact number, Quintin, but I believe that Baptist-O have a good number of minority teachers. St. John doesn't. We've talked about this issue before, and that's why I said that the HR department, do they have MOUs with the Call Me Mr. programs at Clemson and South Carolina State or the College of Charleston?
Right.
These are things that we need to really talk about and have those uncomfortable conversations. And if you do have those MOUs with those particular colleges, where are you filtering those African American graduates from those programs? So there's just a lot of things that in my situational assessment that I have outlined that I would need to have conversation with the superintendent so that the superintendent can have those conversations with his or her cabinet and pass it on down to the staff members at 75 Calhoun. I just believe that, I come from, my last school district that I work in is Prince William County in Northern Virginia, the second largest school district in Virginia, and they're ranked number 7 in the country. We expect excellence. And so that's what I'm bringing here. All of the skills and knowledge that I obtained in my travels across the country, I want to bring those things back to Charleston and utilize it in the rural areas where I grew up and make sure that our expectations and our standards are high, that we no longer we're no longer going to be the tail, but we're going to be the head, and we're going to balance off this district. When employers bring in families, we have Bosch, we have Volvo, Mercedes. Right. We want their families to be able to send their children to public schools and not have to put them in private schools.
Now, okay, Ms. Darlene, there's a lot of things you just said there. Let me go back to the teacher, obviously minority teachers. How many minority teachers do you want to recruit to St. John's and Baptist-O and the rest of District 8 if elected?
Well, I think that it should be a great balance. I think students should learn from all races, because that's what the world is. The world is just not one race. However, we need to make sure that we have a good balance in all of our schools, and especially the rural area. Students need to see individuals and leaders that look like them. And they also need to see teachers that don't look like them, because they need to have a good balance in their life. I went to Baptist-O was probably 99.2% African American when I went there. So I went to the University of South Carolina, and then while I was at Baptist-O, I actually went to the College of Charleston in the Outward Bound program. And so, I actually in middle school went to C.E. Williams for the Otis Oasis program. So I was always in a summer enrichment program, and I had the opportunity to always learn with students that looked like me, as well as students that didn't look like me. And so I want the same type of awareness and exposure now for our students out here.
Now, what exactly is the teacher retention rate inside the Charleston County School District?
I think in some schools in Charleston County School District, the teacher retention is absolutely wonderful. They're vested in their buildings, they're vested in their students, and so they return. One of the things that's important for me to let teachers know is that in order for us to keep teachers, you have to make them feel that you appreciate them. And in order for them to stay, they need to feel as though you're pouring in the best into them, the resources that they need, making sure that you don't take away their planning time to do, lunch duties or anything like that. So in order for us to keep our teacher retention in the rural areas, because Who wants to drive? Oh, if you don't live out here, you're driving out here to St. John's, all the way out to Hollywood, all the way out to Edisto. Back in the day, we had teachers that live in our communities, and that's not necessarily so anymore. So we want to make sure that the teachers that come out here to the islands, that they want to be out here, that they're going to invest in our students, that they feel appreciated, that they know that we appreciate them, that they know that we're going to support them, and that they want to be a part of this journey with us.
Now, how many of those teachers have been retained in District 8 over the past 2 years?
Well, I can say that there's a high turnover at St. John's. And that's something that we need to definitely look at. And there's a lot of openings at Baptist Hill as well. And probably, I think at the lower level, teachers, they stay. But at the high school level, there's a lot of turnover. And this is not coming from me. All you have to do is go to the website and look at all of the job openings that's there. And so that's why, again, I would say that the entire HR department at 75 Calhoun needs to know that they have to put something in place to make sure that they're hiring the highly qualified teachers, and that they are providing incentives so that they can stay. Teachers want to teach. Right. That's why they went to school. But we have to make sure that we pour into them.
Now, what incentives, Ms. Darlene, would be ideal right now for these teachers?
The incentives that would be ideal for them right now, I would say we can start with support. Okay. And especially for a new teacher, I think that it is critical that if you are year 1 through 3, that you are provided a mentor. And there are some schools that don't have enough teachers to accommodate everyone having a mentor. Again, I'm going to go back to 75 Calhoun. I've been in functional school districts in California, in Virginia. I've seen how a functional school district is ran. I've seen high expectation and excellence. If the individual building don't have a mentor for those new teachers, then someone from 75 Calhoun should be able to support that new teacher. We should never leave a new teacher or a new principal, a new administrator without support. I think that's the first thing that we need to do, is to make sure that everyone that is coming into Charleston County right out of college or is a new administrator, that they have the support. And not just a phone call, but again, boots on the ground. You go and check on them. And I know they'll probably say that they have these things in place, but are they effective? Every now and then, you need to do a reassessment of what practices you have in place. And if it's not working, talk to teachers. Ask them. I did.
And let me ask you a redundant question. Is it effective?
It's not 100% effective. And I believe that it needs to be reviewed. I believe that the teachers are leaving and the retention rate is high because those things aren't in place. And it doesn't hurt to every now and then reevaluate programs and protocols and policies that you have in place. But again, that is the responsibility of the school board to look to make sure that your protocols are in place, your policies are in place. It's governance, it's accountability, it's oversight. If the school board see that there are a lot of teachers that are moving, they're not staying, then that's something that we need to look at with the superintendent and have the superintendent go to the HR department to find out what's going on. I just think that, one of the things, the changes that I would like to see is that everyone understand the role of a school board, everyone understands the role of a superintendent, and everyone understand the roles of a superintendent cabinet. And I think if we put the proper management structure in place, we will see major changes in this district across the board for our flagship schools and for our bottom schools, that we will see major changes.
What are the flagship schools in District 8 and what are the bottom schools in District 8?
Well, when I dubbed the term flagships, I would see our academic magnets, school as a flagship school, Wando, schools that are, receiving on the school report card. They are good, above average, excellent. We do have schools in the district that are rated excellent, and that's where we need to bring all of our schools. If there are any schools that's rated below average, we need to spend time pouring into those schools so that we can bring them up every year from below average to good to excellent. And that can be done. I've seen it done before.
Now, okay, what are those below average schools right now in District 8?
Say it again.
Yeah, what are those below average schools in District 8?
The majority of the schools in District 8 are below average.
How many?
Hot Gap is rated good.
Okay.
We do have, I believe, another elementary school over in District 9 is rated good, but most of the schools over in District 23 on this side, they are below average. But again, the correct and the detailed information is listed on this CCSD website and under the dashboard, and you can see all of the schools rating, whether it's failing, below average, average, good, excellence. But now, the bottom line is we want to get all of our schools to be schools of excellence.
Yeah, and I have 2 minutes left, and I wish I could actually have a follow-up question, but let me ask you this. How much does the Charleston County School District actually spend on standardized tests?
Oh gosh, that is, I don't know that dollar amount, but I believe the budget is coming out tonight at the school board, and I will definitely be looking for that. I don't have a problem in looking at a 179-page budget. One of the things that I find is just listening to the committee of the whole meeting a couple of weeks ago, right. They're constantly buying new curriculums, they're buying new tests. And before a teacher can actually see results from one thing, they are introduced and they're given something else. That's something, again, that we really need to look into. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I got less than a minute, Ms. Darlene, but let me ask you one last question. Obviously, this is a campaign, it's a political season. I ask everybody this, so please, I hope you don't get offended, but has anybody with the Coalition for Kids contacted you about supporting your campaign?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want their support?
I don't know. And I guess for me, just coming back to Charleston, I don't know anything in detail about the organization. So I've not spoken to the organization. So I can't say that I want it or don't, because I don't know anything about the organization. Right now, my campaign is going very well. There's thriving. I have started meeting with my constituents, and all is well with my campaign.
Darlene Dunmeyer-Roberson, thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Thank you, Quintin.
Thank you.